What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of More Than Tattoos. My name is Chris Powell. This is Tim Saul, and we have a fun guest today. This was probably one of my most nerve-wracking interviews. There was a lot of build-up to it. It's somebody that I've looked up to for a long time here in the Dayton tattoo scene. One of the OGs who's really helped pave the way for a lot of artists. So for me, it was very nerve-wracking, but I knew I was stepping into ground that really is just going to help me grow and be better. And honestly, it turned out to be an awesome time. So we're bringing Brian Brenner to you guys today. He dropped some good knowledge. And, you know, leading up to this interview, what were some of your thoughts getting ready for it, man? I know you've never really met Brian before.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, leading up to it, I was just trying not to think too much about it because I'm sure that if I allowed it to really get into my head, I would have gotten nervous. But you know, we sat down and started talking with him, and he's bringing up names I don't even know and shit. And I'm like, ooh, fuck. I should probably know a little bit more about this stuff. But it was cool that he's just a fucking genuine dude and, you know, getting to learn a little bit about the industry I'm a part of. So it's a fucking good talk.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. Dude, that shit had time to simmer with me because I was fucking... Unfortunately, we lost audio on our end. You know, it was the first time doing a show. Things were hectic. But really, you guys can hear us talk anytime. You guys fucking stick around, listen to what he has to say, and let us know what you think.
The early days would probably be better described by like a guy like Glenn Scott, or there was Glenn Friesen. They were basically the two Glens, you know, and those dudes were kind of like pioneers. Glenn Scott was the more commercially viable guy. You heard about him on the radio all the time. Glenn Friesen was kind of the underground guy who was very dialed into the scene. I know he was really good friends with Jack Rudy, who was a god in all of our eyes, and Glenn was the man. And so when you have two people who are front runners, one in marketing and one in just raw dog skill sets, you know, those two were able to push tattooing in Dayton, Ohio, and I kind of felt like that they're a big reason of why all of us even exist today, you know. Glenn Friesen had a shop called East Dayton Tattoo on 3rd Street. It was right in the middle of the hood, and he lived in the same house, him and his wife, Carol. I used to go down there to visit. You know, he's a very cantankerous guy, no nonsense. You know, young kid like me, though, I was just so wide-eyed that, like, you know, man, I want to know these dudes, right? Because when you were in Glenn's presence, man, you knew you were in the presence of greatness. The guy was definitely, he had this, like, powerful aura about him, man, that, like, you know, it was intimidating. He wasn't even very tall. He's like 5'5", you know what I mean? With these piercing blue eyes that looked into your soul, you know what I mean? And I was like, I mean, if I can just be a fraction of cool as this dude, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like, what do I have to do? Is there a manual somewhere? You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, dude, like, I mean, you're in your time now, you know? And if you think about, like, rock and roll, the history of rock and roll, like, if a band put out one of the Led Zeppelin records today, well, maybe I shouldn't use Led Zeppelin because they're so kick-ass, and if it came out today, it would still be great. But like, you know, you have certain music that when it comes out, let's say like when Nirvana, Nevermind, if it came out today, nobody would care about it. Not because it's not good, but because sometimes timing is everything too. You know what I'm saying? So when you have a guy like Glenn Friesen back in the day, this guy's putting out tattoos that look very comparable to what we see today, and this motherfucker was doing it in the 80s. You know, when he didn't have the references, he didn't have the how-to manuals. There were things like this, but man, I mean, they weren't like this. So we're in a time when information is being shared, and it was not shared back in the day. You know, in fact, they held on to it like nobody can know my secrets. I mean, now we all give them away to people. You know, we're like, check out our secrets here, take them all.
Right.
Absolutely, and I think we've learned that that's how you grow, but when you were coming up in a time when tattooing wasn't really commercially viable, nobody was like sending their kids to college on it like they do today. Nobody was becoming investors, you know. They were hanging on to every penny they had, to hiding it in their sock drawer because they didn't know how long it was going to last. So, you know, they were going to offer that shit up and just give it to some, you know, after they've worked so hard to attain it, you know what I mean? So, especially when you're like one of the only ones that has it. And Glenn Friesen was one of the only ones that had what he had in the city of Dayton, Ohio. There were a few others, though. There's a really nice guy, his name is Stretch. And he's like an urban legend to a lot of new tattooers now. The dude's like 6'6", you know, he's an incredibly tall guy. I just saw him at Walmart a few weeks ago, actually. It was amazing, you know, and he was like, Brian, I go, Stretch, holy shit. He comes and picks me up. The dude's like, I mean, because he's enormous, you know. And he was one of the sweetest guys. Not the most technically sound tattooer that you ever saw, but he loved being a tattooer. Even though he wasn't really pushing the work, a lot of people made fun of him, disrespected him, talked shit about him all the time, which was really big for so many years in the tattoo industry. Everybody hating each other and whatever. But Stretch really loved being a tattooer and loved being a part of it. And he was dialed in with a woman, her name was Lady Madonna, and they both were on the North Dixie Strip, like right where all the dirty strip clubs and the you know, the little shit corner bars and stuff like that, you know, like when you go pick up a prostitute, get you some meth, do whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, because tattooing was seedy, it was dirty.
Right.
There was no tattoo. Yeah. There was no tattoo shops in Centerville, Ohio then, you know, it's, you know. So, I remember going in those shops, you know, years and years back. You know, we stopped in Lady Madonna's shop. So this is the 80s, right? So the glam metal scene, the spandex and hairspray was really big.
Right.
We would go catch bands down at this bar called The Living Room that became a strip club later, but it was like, you know, just like a nightclub, you know. And I remember all the dudes having like the shiny arm with like the fresh little cowboy skull with the playing cards, you know what I mean?
Fuck yeah.
And they're doing like warrant covers, you know, on the stage.
Right.
And like, you know, and you know, so I'm not even driving at this point in time, you know, and we were able to go hit a few of those hole in the wall shops, you know, and it was a different thing. Like you felt like you were walking into someplace special, you know what I mean? And in like a creepy way, it was dirty. You could smell the cigarettes, you know what I mean? In one way, it's hard to imagine that it was a thing, but I'm telling you, man, it was magical. You know what I mean? It really was, you know. Well, I was a skateboarder, and there was a guy from Dayton, and he was sponsored, amateur, you know. His name was Tommy Ramey, and he was like a, you know, Dayton icon. Looked like Patrick Swayze from The Outsiders with the greaser haircut, you know, fit, trim, super handsome, and he had all these bitchin' fucking tattoos all over him. And, you know, and I got to skate with Tommy a lot when we were younger, and we're still friends to this day, but Tommy has the gnarliest, coolest tattoos from like the late 80s, early 90s. If you see his work now, you're like, holy shit, man. I mean, he was getting the real shit back before any of us even considered doing tattoos. But being a skateboarder, and I was a musician at the time, I knew that the more skill sets that you have in the culture that you love, the more like involved with that culture that you can kind of be, right? So, you know, I'm going, everybody's getting tattooed. I'm already in a rock band. Well, you know, let me see what I can pull off with this, you know. So I ordered a tattoo kit from the back of Outlaw Biker Tattoo of Spalding and Rogers. I'd like the lunchbox power supply, you know what I mean, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so that's probably what pulled me in, was like, you know, was the rock culture and skateboarding, you know, and yeah, and then once I was in, man, it was like, holy shit, well, here we go, you know what I mean? You already tell everybody that you're gonna do something, right? You're like, yeah, I'm gonna be a tattooer. Like, yeah, sure he is. And I'm like, fuck these guys, I'm gonna do this, you know what I mean? Which I think drove me even harder to do it, you know what I mean? Yeah. Well, I have a really good relationship with half of them, you know. I think like when you've got players on your team as a shop owner, I always looked at my shop as like a rock band basically, and all the tattooers are different members of the rock band. And if you look at the Wikipedias of a lot of rock bands, from current and ones that have came and gone, and you look at the members, a lot of times that list of members is like this long, you know what I mean? Sometimes even before the band gets big, they've already had a turnover of members, because there's a lot of plugging away. When you have a vision to be successful, everybody's on board, but when it doesn't come fast enough, they typically will try to find they'll try to go start their own band, or they'll join another band. But I think as far as if you compared Truth and Triumph to bands like in the city of Dayton, I mean, we played on the biggest stage for a long time, and there's been a lot of brilliant players that have helped propel that, and a lot of those players are starting bands of their own, or they have started a project of their own, and their project is kicking ass to this day. So, and those I still have good relationships with. I see all the time. I love going and talking to them. Now they're inspiring me, going, hey, Brian, this is my new thing I'm doing, and all this. And I'm going, oh, damn. Then I go back to my shop, man, this motherfucker over here is doing this shit. You know what I mean? And then it's, you know, and then the ones that necessarily, like, I think the ones that I'm not necessarily cool with, I can compare it to, like, you know, that kind of problem relationship that, like, a child has with, like, a parent that may have fucked up, you know, because there's no manual on being a parent, and there's no manual on being a fucking boss. And when you're as young as I was, dude, I was fucking like 25 when I opened up that shop, you know? I didn't know what I was doing. I was winging it, you know? So, but it does make me feel good, though, to see people be successful. I don't give a fuck if I like them or not. In fact, sometimes, you know, a person I don't even like, I'm like, you know, I don't like a lot of things about this dude, but I like that. You know, he is killing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he's impressive as fuck. Now, I ain't trying to hang out with a motherfucker or nothing. You know what I mean? But, you know, I love that that's yet another person for me to kind of look up to. You know what I mean? And be like, oh, yeah. You know, so when I opened up my shop, I hoped I could pay my apartment, my S10 truck payment. If I was doing that, I was good. You know what I mean? I didn't have a wife at the time, and I didn't have my oldest son until the third year of my shop being open. But, yeah, I had no idea. Well, I didn't know the tattoo was going to get this big, you know? I don't think that like, you know, bands that started playing punk rock could have imagined that, like, they would be selling out the Brady Center. You know what I mean? I mean, when a band like Social Distortion puts out Mommy's Little Monster, right? And they're like traveling around the country in 1985 in like a freaking school bus, you know, touring around, playing these basement shows and all this. I guarantee Mike Ness didn't think, holy fuck, you know what I mean? I'm going to be playing like arenas, you know what I mean? And leave this. I don't think anybody really sets out to leave a legacy. And if that is your goal, I mean, what the hell is that? Because the people that build legacies are just like enormously passionate about what they're doing. You know what I mean? They don't care about the rest of it. You know what I mean? They're so focused in the work that, like, the work is all that matters. And then if the work is genuine, I do think that speaks to the masses. You know what I mean? Now, I have spent time, like when I started getting into marketing, there was a point in time, you may have remembered this period, I got real heavily into advertising in magazines, and we had like the centerfold ads and ITA and Tattoo Society, and we did Inked magazine, like, and that relationship started when we would get a shop article. Then I would talk to the editor and be like, hey, since you're doing this article, what kind of rate can we work out? Because I knew that if we advertised, with websites becoming so relevant, I knew that those magazines reached, like, I mean, they came out all over the world. So if it said www.truthandtriumphtattoo.com, motherfuckers are going to be logging on to that shit. And sure enough, it did work. And then I started leaning a little bit into thinking about making the shop have celebrity status, which, you know, I mean, that was kind of just a never-ending, like, rabbit hole to venture down. Like, well, now we're going to do this, now we're going to do this, and you get the dopamine rush of getting, you know, looking cool for a second. But then I lost sight of, like, actually being genuinely interested in doing authentic work. You know, I'm too busy trying to be Mr. Hotshot. You know what I mean? So, yeah. There were four at one time. There was the West Kettering shop. That was a four-man shop. And then there was Huber Heights, which is now 33 Lions Tattoo. A guy that worked with me for a long time, Ron Fox, he started the Courage Crew, wonderful friend of mine. He took over the Huber shop and rebranded it 33 Lions. The Vandalia shop is still in operation, and I got a wonderful team of guys that are the shop owners. You know, my wife and I purchased the building a handful of years ago, so we're the landlords, and I help out. You know, I'm an advisor. I help with the apprentices and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of their, you know, it's kind of like we built a hot rod, and I said, hey, you know, do you guys want to, like, take over this hot rod? And they're like, hell yeah, we do. You know what I mean? So, you know, they were wonderful to work with, super loyal, incredible artists. They had been offered jobs by nearly everybody else in this town trying to offer them the fucking moon to leave my shop and come. They stayed loyal, and it made me want to, you know, just give them the world, you know what I mean? So here's the keys to the hot rod. So those dudes are up there driving around in it basically right now, and I get to come take a spin every once in a while, you know?
Right.
But I still solely own the Belmont spot, though, you know, so that one's always been kind of the one everybody wanted to work at, you know? It's a little seedier, it's in downtown, you know, it's a little more hipster looking on the inside, you know? Well, things are a lot different now because there was no social media back in the day, and we didn't have computers in our back pockets, so you had landlines, you know what I mean? Dude, when I met my wife, I had a pager. You know what I mean? Somebody need to get a hold of me, man. They beat me. I'd be like, oh, look at this. I didn't want to call him back. I didn't, you know?
Right.
We're very easily accessible now. I think it's helped the tattoo industry grow. I think it's also made people extremely dependent on that. It's made people extremely lazy. I lived in the tattoo shop. Like when I worked for somebody else, I mean, I was in there 6-7 days a week. I didn't want to be anywhere else. You know, I'm in the shop all the fucking time. Opened up our first shop. It opened in '99, and me and the two guys that work with me, we were in there every day of the week, man. You know what I mean? From open to close, just waiting on somebody to come in and come face to face and say, I'd like to get a tattoo, or waiting on the phone to ring. You know what I mean? And then you start running phone book ads back when the phone book was a thing, you know what I mean? Just say, gee, you know, now we can go, what do we need to Google? Okay, we're calling here. Back in the day, you'd have to find the phone book, go to the yellow pages, you know, and those ads weren't free. So, you know, we always had a nice ad, so we'd be in the shop waiting on the phone to ring, being nice to people on the phone, making sure they get into the shop. I mean, there were so many hoops to jump through just to be able to talk to a customer that,
Right.
like, I think your appreciation for the customer was a lot more than now. It's like, I mean, dude, this is an overflowing bucket of opportunity now, you know what I
Right.
mean? And people can contact you directly on your Instagram or your Facebook or whatever you're on. One way, it's really, really good, but I think it has definitely created a platform for us to take it for granted, you know what I mean?
Right.
And to not treat it with, like, you know, the respect that maybe we should, you know, because this is a gift, right? I think it's harder to leave a legacy now because it's became so easy. That means you're going to have more people jumping on and kind of practicing the same techniques. I often hear young tattooers going, oh, I heard that this guy is like advertising this and playing with these hashtags, and it's like sort of, I don't know. I think the best way to do anything, whether it be working out or it be anything you're going to do, is to, well, A, you got to be present. Because if you don't show up to your shop to hang out every day, I mean, I think you lose a lot of inspiration, you know? Like being here with all of these great tattooers, hanging out with you guys, this is charging my batteries, buddy. So when I leave here, I'm going to have energy for at least half the week from what I get to pull in and soak in here. So I think as far as leaving a legacy goes, I think if you spend every waking moment, man, doing something that you love and showing up and being fucking present, I think the best way to beat everybody at whatever is to go, I may not be as talented as them, you know, maybe I don't have the same tools, I don't get to work around all the, you know, the right people, this or that, but if you fucking show up every day and you work harder than everybody else, you can kind of look at everybody else and go, how hard is that guy working? If he's working 10 hours a day, you work fucking 11. If he's working 11, you work 13. If he's working 13, you go, how do I do 15? You know what I mean? And go, I am going to outwork any and everybody that I'm around. And even the ones that I'm not around, I'm going to find out if there's anybody in my area that's working harder than me. And if they are, I'm going to at least try to match that motherfucker, right? And then I'm going to try to top them. You see what I mean? So then you always have to be present, man, because fucking, you know, there's a book called Talent is Overrated, and that's what it talks about. It basically talks about if you can outwork a guy, that's your deadly weapon. People don't got endurance. Most, especially young people, are always quick out the gate. You know what I mean? But when you're a young person, like let's say you're 22 or 23, if I tell a 22 or 23-year-old, I want you working 15 hours a fucking day for the next 3 fucking years, they've only been alive for 21 years. So 3 years of that 21 years, dude, it seems like eternity because you've only been, you know what I mean? If you take $3 from a person that has 21 fucking bucks, they're like, well, damn, that was like a little chunk of my 21 bucks. But when you're fucking 51 like me, and you take $3 away, I'm like, shit, motherfucker, I still got 48 left. Right. You know what I mean? So if a person tells me, like, yo, motherfucker, you got to work fucking 15 hours a day for the next 3 years, I'm like, yeah, that sounds kind of hard, but I think I got that. You know what I'm saying? Because your life experience is a little longer, and 3 years doesn't look quite as crazy. You know what I mean? Speaking of some of the killers that came out of the shop, so Kyle Cotterman, definitely a force to be fucking reckoned with. Kyle's amazing, dude. I used to tattoo his dad, and Tony Cotterman is cool as hell, dude. That guy is super cool. And he's like, yo, my son, you know, is an artist. Kyle, come in the shop. Kyle had no problem working his ass off. His dad, great work ethic. His mom been at Marion's Pizza. He just told me earlier, man, she's been there for like 30 years. You know what I'm saying? Like freaking, he comes from a family that knows what it's like to work. Man. And Kyle was no exception. Worked his ass off. Big Me's worked his ass off, dude. That guy, I was just down there hanging out with him about a week ago, and he told me that so right after he left our shop, it was to go travel. And he was doing 48 conventions a year for 3 years in a row.
God damn. Fuck, dude.
Think about that.
Holy shit.
So an outsider would be like, oh, he's just Instagram famous, or like, you know what I mean? He's popular because this is, man, motherfucker, that dude,
right?
That dude fucking went harder and longer than fucking most anybody, which is precisely why it's pretty safe to say Big Me's is the most famous tattooer from Dayton. Right? You know, he's got the biggest social media presence and all this. And the really coolest part about him is he don't even like that shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, he's all lowbrow and shit. He don't even give a fuck about it. You know what I mean? Which I'm sure he does care about it because it attributes to his livelihood. But, like, you know, the dude is just genuine, man. So back to my case in point, that the motherfucker's like, I'm showing up, and I'm working every day, all day, you know? And people like that, whenever I go and I get to hear him talk now, I'm like, I leave there charged, you know what I mean? I'm, you know, I gotta get 4 days of energy.
Right.
Thanks to Big Me's. You know what I mean? So, it's pretty cool. Oh, man. You caught me off guard with that one. I think it needs some originality. Because I feel like that, like, man, when I was coming up, dude, it was like you had to pull a little more from inside you. Because right now you can get on the internet and look at McFuckstick's tattoos and just bite every fucking thing that he's doing and put your own little twist on it just enough to say that it's not a ripoff. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like that tattooing got to where like hair metal was in the late 80s. Like, so when hair metal first came out and you had like Motley Crue and you had like Quiet Riot and you had these bands that were like, holy shit, this new music. Wow, this is amazing, right? You know? By the end of the late 80s, you had fucking some cherry pie bullshit from Warrant. You had all these hairspray spandex bands. You couldn't tell one from the fucking next, and it became oversaturated to the point that it blew up, and they couldn't sell records no more. You know what I mean? Which is like when grunge came in and shook it up because of that originality. I don't really see like, I mean, there are a lot of guys that are coming out that are pushing some boundaries, but it's still kind of like few and far between. You know what I mean? Because when I just see the same shit over and over again, I'm like, okay, cool, it's another wet portrait of Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, you say, okay, I've seen that. And I think the guys that pioneered that style, I mean, hell, man, I mean, they're fucking beasts. But at the end of the day, though, man, I mean, it's like there's a bunch of, it's like when you go to Trader's World, there's all the imposter brands in every booth. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You know, I kind of feel like that a lot of times you come to a lot of these conventions, not necessarily this one, but some of the other ones that I've been to, man, I'm just sitting here going, dude, every one of these fucking bitches got their tattoo style in the lost and found. You know what I mean? It's like, man, you know, every once in a while I meet a person and it'll normally be a young kid where I'm like, oh shit, this motherfucker got something. As long as he stays true to what he's doing, you know, he's gonna be A-okay. I think it becomes very, very enticing to try to start modeling yourself after what you know sells or what works or what's popular, you know what I mean? But back to that Nirvana record, like, when they wrote that record, they had no intention on selling a bazillion copies, you know what I mean? That happened so organically that, you know, And I mean, it's one of the most like known albums ever, you know. You see 14-year-old kids wearing Nirvana shirts now, you know.
Right.
That changed shit, you know. And I think that like if a tattooer can kind of stay in that lane and not get enticed by all this glitz and gleam, or if like, dude, if I do a nice shiny portrait of Yoda, of like Star Wars Yoda guy, or you know what I mean, Darth Vader with the fucking lightsaber shining on his face, you know what I mean, and all the bells and whistles are on it. I'm not saying that that's not impressive, because it definitely is, man. And when I see it, I'm like, damn, that's really cool. But I'm probably not going to buy the record, you know what I mean?
Right.
I think AI is kind of a cool tool. I guess it depends on like everybody has their reasons, I think, why they like and they don't like things. If I'm just going for the visual aesthetic, then AI is kind of cool, you know what I mean? Because it's like you have this image that you've helped a computer generate, basically, right? And then you also have the skill sets to replicate this thing that you came up with your computer program,
Right.
and then you execute a gnarly tattoo. I work with a handful of guys that do that exact same thing. And I mean, it's a wonderful product, you know, at the end of the day, it's an awesome product. I'm a very organic tattooer though, and what floats my boat and what makes me like doing it is that like, I'll take the most minimal fucking outline, man. There may only be 7 lines on the thing, and I don't even know what it's gonna look like when it's done. Then I turn it into something and I start building on shit, and then something organically happens. Oh shit, this is cool. And then my client is just getting fucking, oh, they're all kind of stoked watching it come to life. There's no reference picture. I don't know what it's gonna look like. They don't know what it's gonna look like. And it gets done and they're like, dude, what the fuck? How did that just happen? And then you have a connection with your customer that is like, I mean, you know, it's unlike anything else. I don't make as much money as the AI guys, though. You know? And it's not even just with artwork, it's with music, too. I mean, dude, you can, like, drag and drop drum beats across the thing, make them sort of sound like real drums. You only have to play a 4 measure on your guitar, and then you just cut and paste that measure that you did and drag some shit around, and you've got a song on the fucking computer. The band doesn't even got to rehearse. Sometimes bands will make a record, and then they have to learn their record.
Right.
You know what I mean? But think about it, though. What we're talking about, AI, same fucking thing. You make the fucking thing on AI, you've got this brilliant image, and then you have to learn how to make this image. Because you didn't create the image first, you have to learn how to replicate it. So, sort of the same thing, you know what I mean? I think you'll feel it. Because, like, and I don't think, like, sometimes it isn't even, like, for me, I don't even think it's like how well you could render an image, or I'm going to render it like this. And there's like a language now, you know, like high saturation, low saturation, you know, and all of this. And I think oftentimes, especially if you're dealing with like a realistic image, you know what I mean? Finding like different textures, like to create your lights and darks, and you find a way that like, you know, from just scribbling around and fucking around with your pencils, you know, and all of this, you will eventually find something that is so uniquely you, because you're using your strong points to it and all this. You'll eventually get to a point to where I think it'll be nearly impossible to replicate what you're doing if it's truly fucking authentic. You know, because I don't believe that there is a band out there that could emulate the way Nirvana sounded. You know what I mean? I mean, they try and they get close, but it's not quite, you know, and I could go down the rabbit hole with bands because I love music, so it's always like, I'm like, this band, they had it, nobody can rip them off. When I hear it, I'm like, I know who the fuck that is. You know what I mean? It's very authentically them. Or when you hear another band trying to do it, you can tell it's not the band that you know they're emulating, but you know they're emulating it because they're doing something that only that particular band does. Slayer would be a good example. You know what I mean? When you hear the way he walks all over the neck, you're like, dude, I know who that is. And then if you hear a band doing it, you're like, this isn't Slayer, I can tell, but I can tell he loves Slayer. Oh, it's been great, man. It was good to meet you. And, you know, I mean, we were talking earlier, and I was like, man, when those Aisle 9 guys first come out, they were a force to be reckoned with, right? You know, the owner, he was pretty good. He apprenticed with me and all that. He was good. Hip was good. Zach was good. You were killer. He was the baddest one now. We were just talking about that too, man. You were the baddest motherfucker there. We were just talking about that at the shop too. And it was really funny because the Aisle 9 guys that were around that all agreed too. And I was like, yeah. Oh, well, you know, and I also think that you not knowing kind of shows the humility of who you are, you know? And it also explains to me why you keep getting so fucking good. Right?
Right.
Because when you think you've arrived, you know, you're like, oh shit, kick back, put the feet up. I'll just do one tattoo this week, it's all good. You know what I mean? So yeah, that is definitely what you just said explains a lot, you know what I mean? But yeah, thanks a lot for having me come here, man. Anything off the top of my head I could lead the viewers with? Oh man. Yeah, there actually is. I chased success my whole life, and I think I was finding my self-worth in, there was no Instagram likes, but like winning, competing at these kind of events, you know, and coming and having trophies lying in the front of my table, which was pretty much every convention we went to. That's how it was, and we were winning, and then we're partying our asses off after we won. But what I did was I ignored what was most important, and your mind and your body and your spirit are the most important things. And you can say that this has a lot to do with your spirit, and maybe it does to some extent, but I think that your spirit actually contributes more to this than vice versa, you know? So back in the day, tattooing was my first love. It's all I thought about, and I was gonna crush this shit no matter fucking what. Everything else had to be put aside, whether it be my wife or friends, family, whatever, you know what I mean? I'm crushing this shit. This is my goal. And all that stress that was put on me from that made me ignore my mind and my body and my spirit, led to a lot of anxiety. I drank a little more than I should have. Was prescribed pharmaceuticals for anxiety attacks that I was having, and more drinking and weight gain and not eating good. You know, I got up to about 200 pounds, you know, and all this. Had a brain bleed in 2015. Was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. I owned more shit. Like, my net worth looked really good on paper. Anything that I thought I was going to achieve was way bigger than ever. And I was the most miserable person, most miserable version of myself that I had ever been, man. When I looked in the mirror, I seen something that I fucking hated. And I kept telling myself I did well, success, and all this other kind of shit. But when you're going in this journey, man, your mind and your body and your spirit are the most important things, man. Your success will come after all that shit is in good balance, man. But if you ain't fucking healthy, I mean, what's the point of being worth millions of dollars, man, when you're not the best physical version of yourself, you know what I mean? Because your physical equates to your mental. You know, I used to bend over to tie my shoes and my face would get all red and shit, you know what I mean? Because it's cutting off the circulation, you know?
Right.
And like, I still ate like shit though, and all that kind of stuff, man. You young people get involved with this, man. I cannot stress exercise, and every day get yourself a routine. Eat fucking right, man. Fucking study your fucking Bible, your Quran, whatever religious or spiritual thing that you're on, Bhagavad Gita, you know, whatever it is that you're into, lean into that shit, man. Try to get in touch with your higher power and love yourself, man. And do not treat yourself like shit, chasing success, chasing money, chasing fame, and all that bullshit, man, because that shit will get ripped out from underneath you, man, when your body and mind shuts down, dude. You know what I mean? I've been there, and it was awful, man. I put my family through a lot of shit, you know what I mean? I fucked up the first half of my life, so now I got another half to make it up, you know what I'm saying? So getting healthy, man, it's number one.